Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. They go over every vehicle. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, online, sunburymotors.com. We're going to get to Bo in a second. What did I say in the show 2 weeks ago? Okay? Harbaugh to the Chargers is real. I have a source that has told me yes. Not going to reveal the source, not going to go there. But, and voila, he's with the Chargers. You don't believe me, you don't trust me, I don't understand. I don't get it. Well, what's the deal, Todd? I mean, did the suit finally get to you? You used to be more open and trusting.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Was I here for that one? I don't remember that.
You probably weren't here that day. Because I think that may have been a Caleb day. I think it was a Caleb day. But yeah, I said 2 weeks ago. I said Harbaugh the Chargers, real. Because I had somebody tell me that I trusted. They said, no. And that the offer that Michigan made was a save face offer. Okay. We got Bo? So let's rock and roll with Bo. Bo Smolka is the Ravens beat writer for Front Page. Bo, first of all, welcome. It's really great to have you with us on the show. I know it's a thrill for everybody for you to talk back to everybody at Bucknell, your old friends.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I heard Todd Hummel way back. But, yeah, it's good talking to you. Thanks.
All right. So this team is constructed in an interesting way where there's a lot of old standards that have been used. Linebackers, getting a quality safety. In terms of pure roster construction, how do you like the balance of this football team and how it's come together?
Oh, I think it's come together really well. And the interesting thing, maybe the most interesting thing about it is back in July, around here, the big question was, where are they going to get a pass rush from? I mean, who's going to rush the passer? Where are they getting their sacks from? No one had any idea. And then they ended up leading the league in sacks. And two of the big guys that did it were Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy, who weren't even here in July. Right. They weren't signed until August, and Van Noy didn't join the team until September. But they've been a huge part of what they're done. And Roquan Smith in the middle of the defense has just been unbelievable. John Harbaugh called him maybe one of the great trades of the organization, and he's right. It goes through him. It was interesting. Yesterday, Lamar Jackson was asked about Roquan Smith, and he called him the Ray Lewis juice for our generation, which is so true. He's just got this energy, and the defense feeds off him. And I know there's a lot written about Lamar Jackson and everything, but to me, what this defense has done this year is even more impressive.
Yeah, and I as much as Roquan Smith has done, and I think Queen is tremendous. I mean, I don't think he gets enough publicity for what he does. But the guy that really knocks me down is Kyle Hamilton. When you watch him play that spot and the versatility he brings to the field, what are you seeing?
He's just a different kind of guy. He's incredibly physical. That's the thing that strikes you more than anything about him is how physical he is. He's incredible. I mean, 6'4", and so when they drafted him, so many people talked about his length and how he's a different-looking safety. But he's incredibly physical. He plays up near the line of scrimmage. Remember, they drafted him as a safety. He's basically been their top nickel corner this year, effectively. He comes up and plays in the slot. 6'4", really, really good fundamental tackler. And what strikes me when I watch him play is a lot of times these teams will run these bubble screens where they put a receiver out and they have a couple receivers a couple blockers in front of that receiver. And Hamilton will just throw his blocker to the side and make the tackle for a yard or two loss. Really good instincts. And like I said, to me, what strikes me about him is how fundamentally physically he is. And I think that speaks to this defense. I think this defense is, they just hit you. They hit you, and they hit you, and they hit you. And I think it's been their calling card all year, and I think it's been what's made them as good as they are.
Yeah, the play about him that blows me away is the game, the San Francisco game, where he's blitzed, puts pressure, gets cut, gets up, and on the deflection, he's the guy that gets the interception. Really?
Yeah, well, the effort was him. The effort is always there. Against Cleveland earlier in the year, he came on a blitz, tipped the ball up in the air, caught it, and went in for a touchdown. He had 3 sacks against the Colts when he was coming in off the slot, and they were totally not expecting it. Now, he hasn't had any more sacks since then, but that play you're talking about, yeah, total effort. Like I said, his instinct is all there, and he's a really instinctive physical player. I mean, they are so happy with him.
Lamar Jackson was at a point where Rodgers was with Green Bay and where Mahomes has been for a couple of years now with Kansas City, where they weren't giving him a lot of help on the outside receiving-wise. Now they got Bateman, they got Beckman, and then the draft pick of Flowers of Boston College. What has that meant to Lamar Jackson, the thrower?
Yeah, it's interesting because Bateman, they also brought in Nelson Aguilar, who's been kind of a quiet but contributor. But Flowers has been the one that's really, really, really stepped up. He's not a big guy, but no. He's a very shifty, really good yardage after the catch guy. And, I mean, I know he can go long, but he's really good in that intermediate zone of like 8 to 14 yards where Jackson likes to throw it. And you throw it there, Flowers makes a catch, he makes a juke step, he makes a defender miss, and suddenly he's got 19 yards. That's what he's done for them. He's been everything the Ravens want. And let's face it, this Ravens organization has a tortured history of drafting wide receivers. One after another generally don't pan out. But Flowers has been everything they could hope for. And as I said, he and Jackson got, they've had good connection all year. And he just tends to get open. He's really, really hard to cover because he moves well, he cuts well. You want to cover him man-to-man, good luck, because he's just going to get open at, say, 6 yards. Short pass, he'll turn into a longer gain. So that he's been a big part of what they do.
It's hard to lose a guy like Mark Andrews, who is just a tremendous player. I've always thought he was a tremendous player. But to find Isaiah Likely in the 4th round out of Coastal Carolina, what does that tell you about their scouting system? Because he means a lot to what they do.
He's been terrific. And the interesting thing is 2 years ago, Isaiah Likely's rookie summer, he was probably the best player in training camp. He just wowed everybody. And they actually drafted a tight end in the round before that named Charlie Kolar, who has not advanced the way Likely has. He was hurt most of that rookie year. But anyway, so Likely is the player of training camp. And then he's kind of quiet. He drops a couple balls in week 1, and he kind of got lost in the shuffle. When Andrews missed a couple games, Likely came on and showed something. But this past 6 or 7 games with Andrews out, Likely has been phenomenal. He's big. He catches like a wide receiver. He's got an unbelievable ability to stiff arm and make yardage after the catch. So, yeah, Andrews goes down, and there's apprehension about Andrews going down right before a really tough stretch of games with Jacksonville and San Francisco and Miami. And the Ravens are hanging on to first place in the division, and can they still do it with Andrews out? And Likely has been terrific. I think 6 touchdowns in the last 6 games. But like I said, he's really sure-handed. He runs hard after the catch, and they can't possibly have expected him to be as good as he's been in filling in for Andrews.
Can Andrews, is the door open to him possibly playing at least a few plays on Sunday?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. He's practiced now. He practiced a little bit the week before the Houston game. He practiced last week. We saw him running around in the field house in practice, and I thought he was moving pretty well. I thought he was going to play against Houston, actually. He's out there again practicing this week. I don't want to be the guy that tells Mark Andrews you're not playing in the AFC Championship game. I'll say that much. He's a competitive guy. I think he'll want to be out there. I suspect we'll see him. And to your point, I think we'll see him in limited doses. I think Isaiah likely will be the main tight end, but in 3rd and 5, down at the 8-yard line maybe, down inside the 10, 3rd and middle to short. Those are the kind of plays that I think you'll see Andrews for. That's where Andrews and Jackson have always been best. So I would think it'll be a limited load, but yeah, I'm personally expecting Andrews to play.
Right now, we've gone through all this so far, and I've asked no questions about who. I've not asked you a single question. That's exactly right. I've not asked you one Lamar Jackson question yet. At some point, it has to be talked about. You see him all the time. Where have you seen the development of a more complete player that's made a difference in this year's team?
Well, I think there's a couple things. To me, for one, he's healthy, right? He missed the last month of the last 2 seasons. But I think this year he came in just more relaxed. He won't say it, but I think the contract situation was a bit of a burden last year. He seemed kind of tense, even when and we don't see a whole lot of him outside the interview settings, but he's an engaging guy in the interview settings. He's warm. And last year, some of that didn't seem to be there as much. And I think getting the contract stuff done took a big load off him. For one, I think he's relaxed. To your point earlier about Zay Flowers, they've given him better players. That's a big part of it. I mean, they just have more better players on offense. When you go back to that 2019 team that went 14-2, they went 14-2 with guys like Willie Snead and Seth Roberts at wide receiver.
Yep.
They have better players this year, so that's been a big part of it. He's still a good runner. I think he reads the field well. I think he's comfortable in this Todd Monken offense. There's still questions about his accuracy on the deep ball, his passing, his completion percentage overall this year was his highest of his career.
Right.
But again, I think primarily that's between 0 to 15 yards. He's been very good. You get the 25, 30, 40 yarders like you see Josh Allen heave downfield. Those are not his strength, and they haven't been. He's only doing 1 or 2 a game. But the intermediate passes to receivers that are really good, I think, is where this team's so good. And then, of course, if that's working, and if the running game is working, it opens him up as a runner as well. And he's not running as much as past years, but he's picking his spots, and he's still an extremely dangerous runner.
I have to ask you about the 2 Penn State guys, Odafe Owe and Jordan Stout. What's been your thought and the organization's thought on each?
Well, Jordan Stout, his last year, his rookie year, I think he and they would say it was a little bit of a disappointment. I think he felt the pressure of coming in as a 4th-round pick and replacing a guy in Sam Cook who played more games than anyone ever for the team. So it was a humongous change going from Cook to Jordan Stout. And so I think his rookie year wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And he even said as much. He said he felt like he was pressing. He's been more consistent this year. I honestly think his best game he played might have been in the one that didn't really, quote, matter, the Week 18 game against the Steelers. It was an absolute monsoon here. It was 40 degrees and pouring, and Stout was absolutely crushing the ball. He's been much better this year. He's been a very consistent player, and I think they're pleased with him this year. Odafe Owe was another interesting one because there's been people that have not been happy with him, fans I'm talking about, because this guy, again, came in as a first-round draft pick, and they expected huge things of him right away, and it didn't translate on the field the first year or two. There wasn't a lot of production there, and you talk to Mike McDonald, the coordinator, and he says, the sacks weren't there, but what people don't see is that he blew up the pocket and someone else got the sack. And that might be true. That also might be a bit diplomatic. Always had games where he's looked really good, and he's had games where he's kind of vanished. He's been hurt, too. I mean, he's been dealing with an ankle injury the last 2 or 3 weeks, so he's been limited. He's got his spot, and I think he's going to be a big part of what they do for the next – I think that they would definitely like to see an impact from him. But he's been quiet overall. The potential is no doubt there, and we've seen it in spurts. but it hasn't been there consistently.
Bo, one final question. How do you view the matchup with Kansas City?
Well, I mean, I am going to lean on this Ravens defense because I just watched them play over the course of the year, and just their physicality is something that teams aren't used to. That's my stretch. I saw it against Seattle, against Detroit, against Houston this past week. After a while, they just wear down these offenses. They just look like they're tired of getting hit. Having said that, you've got to deal with Patrick Mahomes in January, which is not a good thing to do. So he's going to be an extremely dangerous person. I'm wary of picking against Patrick Mahomes in January. But I do think the Ravens defense is going to ultimately make the plays that win the game, whether that's a sack, whether it's a tip ball that gets picked, whether it's just knocking Pacheco out of the game, whatever it might be. I think the Ravens are going to win. I think it's going to be close. And I think ultimately we're going to be talking about the Ravens' defensive effort.
January 3rd, 1971. The last time Baltimore hosted an AFC championship game with some guy named Johnny Unitas at quarterback.
Yeah, around here they're saying this is it's obviously the biggest football game in Ravens history at home. Around here, the belief is that this is the biggest sporting event in Baltimore since the Cal Ripken 21-31 game. And they've got all the people coming back for this game. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed are being introduced before the game. Michael Phelps, the Olympic gold medalist who's from Baltimore, is delivering the game ball. Ripken actually was the game captain last week, but last I saw, tickets on the secondary market are up at like $800 to $1,000. So this town is bonkers this week.
Bo, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it. Great work as always.
All right, thanks, guys. Good talking to you.
All right. There you go. So that's Bo Smolka.